You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Mathews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
You can't say God on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie,
Ian, you son of a bitch!
my God, it's been a minute since we've recorded, homeboy.
A very long time, months almost.
Yep, you've been hanging out with Tony Robbins. I spent a couple weeks in Morocco climbing mountains. It's good to be back.
That's right.
Good to be
We're going to
back.
follow this up with talking about the Detroit Lions. Like, you would think there is something we would come up with that would actually compel an audience to listen.
Before I
After
left,
all
I
this
was talking
time.
to you about the Lions. After I came back, I was talking about the Lions. I'll be talking about the Lions next month. Doesn't really matter. I'm always talking about the Lions, Frank.
If you look at Ian's social media posts, and he posted one this morning about me never doing work, it's untrue. I do work. It's just I'm never listened to. So we're going to not talk about the incredible Miami Dolphins, the fact they have the best player in football on their team. Nope, we're not talking about him. Talking about the guy with 12 concussions who like curled up into a pretzel. Not going to talk about him either. Nope.
the best guy in football, you want to talk about Skylar Thompson? Is that we can get into that if you want? Is that what you want to dive
Precisely.
into?
Do you think he's got a macaroni and cheese card?
You have the most concussed player in football for sure. There's no one more
Clearly.
concussed. No, allegedly. I think he was fine. His fingers curling up. That's normal. It's normal.
Yeah. So let's get into it.
We the Detroit Lions, who are the saddest franchise in the National Football League by a long shot, the winners of one playoff win in the last 65 years. They actually had a winning season, so it's a big deal. Like, if you were to follow any social media from people in Michigan, you would think the Lions won the Super Bowl, even though we didn't even make the playoffs. I'm being one of them. I thought it was the greatest season ever, and we beat Green Bay on the road to knock them out of the playoffs, and that was kind of our Super Bowl. We were pretty happy about it. But behind that success are a number of different things that I think are worth talking about because they apply to business. One, the team is starting to have success because Old Man Ford died, and Old Man Ford's wife got out of the way. The Fords were terrible owners forever. And the daughter is now very involved in it. And the smartest thing she did right out of the gate is say, I don't know anything about football, and I'm going to hire someone who really knows something about football. So she brought Chris Spielman in, who was a all-star linebacker for the Lions in the 90s, and a football guy, a guy that really knows football, and said, go run a search, find us a coach, find us a general manager. I'm going to stay out of your way. I'm here to support you financially. I'm here to make whatever deals you need to make to get it happen. But I wouldn't know the first thing about doing any of this, and I want a football guy to make this decision. So he went out, got a very sharp general manager from the Rams, and hired a guy by the name of Dan Campbell as our head coach. And Dan Campbell got a lot of grief when he first came in because he's a
He sounds
meathead.
like a barbarian. Like most people, and he was also the Dolphins coach for a period of time. I'm not sure if you were aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how extensive your research is on this subject.
I
But
know.
like most of the guys are cerebral at this point, and Dan Campbell kind of comes off as like a true, like he would race Ian to take his shirt off first in a slamming beer competition.
And make
And
me look way better when doing it. He has about 70 pounds of muscle on me. He's massive too. He looks like
I
a
would
barbarian.
imagine he would win.
Yes, he's a massive guy. But he kind of came in his initial press conference, went very strangely. He's very passionate and excited to be in Detroit, but he was talking about biting kneecaps, and we're going to be a fighting mad team, and blah 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 blah. To me, it sounded like every other guy who ever came in to the Lions and said, we're going to change the culture. And I roll my eyes because I've seen 30 coaches. But what's behind all that bluster is he's actually a very smart guy, and he's got great emotional intelligence. He's very good at knowing the temperature of his team. And
You think Campbell's a really smart guy?
I think he's incredibly smart. I think he wants you to think he's stupid. Everywhere he's been, people say he's got a really bright mind for football, and he really understands locker rooms, and everything he's got involved in has gotten better. When he's had to like delve in and micromanage it, that part of the team gets better. And he deserves credit for the offense getting better because he's the one that promoted a guy by the name of Ben Johnson, who was a young kid coach. He promoted him to offensive coordinator.
But go, Ian, go into this. So what was Ben Johnson doing 4 years ago? Do you know the arc?
The arc of Ben Johnson. So Ben Johnson came from the previous regime, which was Matt Patricia.
Do you know what he was doing with his role? Do you know what his job description was 4 years ago?
I don't know exactly 4 years ago. He was not.
He was like one rung above the TA. The TA is the lowest possible guy, like almost like a not paid position. He was like a manager, and he went from a manager to a quality control guy to I'll look it up while you're saying it.
He was an assistant. He was an assistant offensive coach. He did some quarterback coach stuff, and then what's crazy is the guy's so young. Even in training camp, Dan Campbell wouldn't commit to who was going to call the plays, whether it was going to be Dan. Because like at the end of last year, part of the Lions turnaround, Dan Campbell started calling offensive plays. He fired his offensive coordinator, started calling offensive plays himself. And he wouldn't commit to Ben is going to be the one calling the plays because he was so new. He wasn't sure.
Listen to this arc. 2015 tight ends coach with the Dolphins. Had to get that in there. 16, 17 assistant wide receiver coach. So he wasn't even the wide receiver coach. He was the assistant wide receiver coach, second in command through 2017. 18, he was promoted to wide receivers coach. Then he moved to the Lions, where he was an offensive quality control coach. To me, that's a demotion. So he was demoted almost. And then he made it to tight ends coach for 2 years, which is also Campbell's position. So I would imagine that there's some synergy there because they probably spoke the same language with tight ends. And then he was made coordinator this year. But that is from a offensive quality control coach to an offensive coordinator in 3 years is meteoric.
Well, see, the thing I think it's worth talking about for a second is just in the NFL, entire management teams come and go every 2 to 3 years. It's just the way it is. If you don't win, the head coach is out, and when the head coach is out, the new guy that comes in gets rid of everybody. So Ben Johnson was a little unique in that Campbell was like, oh, young guy, smart, probably not paying him a lot. Looks like he's doing enough. He didn't just wipe him out, which was smart, right? A lot of people come in and be like, anyone who Patricia hired is out because that guy's a moron.
That's right. And he's not my guy, and these are not my guys. It's so I don't know, militaristic's the wrong word. It's like pack orientation.
Yeah. So Dan was like, I'm going to interview everyone. I'm going to decide who stays. And he actually did keep a number of people, which normally people don't do. So he kept him around, and he's been nothing short of just a phenomenon. Like so if you weren't following the Lions, they won 9 games. They lost 8, and their offense was top 5 in just about every category. Scoring, I think they scored some like 30 some points a game. Early in the year, they were losing a lot. They went 1-6 to start the year, and it had nothing to do with the offense. They were losing scores 38 to 35.
They were losing shootouts
To everybody. Philadelphia to Seattle. IJ and I went to a few games. There were shootouts, but our defense couldn't stop anyone. But our offense was unbelievable and very creative. And with, our quarterback is Jared Goff, who was kind of dumped by the Rams unceremoniously. Cast off. We have a bunch of receivers you probably haven't heard of that are young guys that are kind of making a name. We don't really have a star running back. We do it by committee. So the incredible part is they kept scoring with a bunch of guys that you wouldn't be picking up on your fantasy football team. They were, they were doing it with, now they have a very good offensive line. So there's some things, but if you watch the games, you're like, oh, wow, this guy's really creative. And as the year went on, so they won 8 of their last 10 games. They went 8-2 to end the year. And a lot of those games started getting more national prominence. So they were getting more on TV, and people paid attention. And the plays he was calling at the end of games to seal games were really creative. Like you'd see it and say, I've never seen that before. He'd put an offensive tackle in motion to come down the line to block, and then he'd run him out into the flat, and he'd be wide open, and they'd pass to a tackle on 4th down, like crazy stuff. So got people talking. There was buzz.
2 incredibly unique things he did. Like he did incredible stuff. He was putting up 30 points with the Lions, which isn't easy. So, and the years before they were averaging fractions of that.
Half of
wise.
that. Yes.
Right. So like Ian's point, like if you're not a football fanatic, an offensive tackle weighs roughly 325 pounds if it's a low carb day. And literally he broke someone out, like it was a number 2 overall draft pick, broke him out and threw a pass to him. And his name's Penei Sewell. It was a fascinating play. And like he ran it and Campbell like looked up and goes, what the hell? That was a 4th down call.
Yeah.
And the other thing he did, like the most famous play, one of the most famous plays in Dolphin history, is a play called the hook and ladder. Hook and ladder is you throw a ball to one guy, and as soon as he catches it, he throws it to somebody behind him, and that person runs. But you usually do that in desperation situations. It was 2nd and 20 against their heated rival to knock them out of the playoffs, and this guy ran that call. Like 2nd and 20, he ran a freaking hook and ladder. It was like, so like creative is, I want to belabor this for reasons. When we get into this, I want to come back to it in a minute. Like this is creativity past creativity. This is daring. If these things don't work, this guy looks like an idiot, but they did. And he was calculated and he caught people by surprise. But there's something that I want to come back to that I'll shut up and kind of let Ian keep going. I'll tell you why in a minute.
No, I love that. So so he's really smart. He's one of those high flying, if he were in a company, he would be getting promoted every year, kind of a kid into bigger and bigger jobs. He's proven himself on a big stage. And when he was given an opportunity, he didn't shrink from it. He right. Absolutely grabbed it, and he doesn't coach scared. And I would say this is where I think Dan Campbell deserves a lot of credit, because when you have a young kid like that who's never called plays before, you feed off of your boss. If your boss is the kind of person that if you were to call a little bit out of the box play were to chew your ass, right? This is a lot of times, Frankie, I get asked this if I'm teaching a management course and someone's trying to change a culture. In my opinion, the biggest thing about culture is how the boss responds to failure. And there's no way he's calling those plays if Dan Campbell was some raving lunatic that chewed your ass when a play didn't. Like Dan Campbell goes. Dan
Campbell's management style is a little bit loose, and he lets people take chances.
Yeah, and he's he tightens up when he needs to, but Dan gives you a chance to make a mistake, and I think that's a big part of why people like playing for him and working with him. Is he doesn't say, hey, it's yours, but then when it doesn't go right, he chews your ass, which is what I could see a Belichick doing, where you see Belichick coaches, they play tight, like they're going to get in trouble if they make a mistake. This is the opposite. And Campbell, that's his style. He went for 4th down more than any coach in the league. He ran 3 times as many fake punts as any other team. He runs fake punts from anywhere all the time. And part of that is because his defense sucks. So it's like, I don't want to punt to the other team. I'm just going to try to stay on the field as much as I can. But I want to give Dan Campbell credit for letting this guy blossom. He deserves credit because no one had ever heard of him before this year. He promoted him. He gave him his only offensive coordinator position. He gave him the ability to call plays. And this guy wouldn't be calling all these creative out-of-the-box plays if he was scared he was going to get in trouble or fired if they didn't go well. He's getting a chance to go ahead. Do you remember which Malcolm Gladwell book was it where he talked about coaches who were scared to pull the goalie in hockey, even though the stats would say you
outliers.
You should do it more often, but they don't, even if it means like if you're down 3, you should pull the goalie with 5-6 minutes left. They won't do it because if they get scored on, they're afraid that someone might make fun of them. And for me, this is a cultural thing that Dan Campbell set in, is he let this guy blossom. But it's also Dan Campbell knows his audience. He knows that the fan base in Detroit is sick of playing conservative. We're sick of watching losses. We're sick of giving the other team the ball at the end of the game.
The Detroit fan base is so the Detroit fan base is so sick of a mediocre product. We have to do this podcast. Like this is a non-playoff team.
Yes, 100%. And
this is less thrilling than Watergate for most people.
We would 100%, which no one listened to that, and more people will listen to this for the record. So there's something about when a fan base is starving that you play to them, that you don't play loose, you just go for it. Because we'd rather lose going for it what the hell do we have to lose? We're the Lions. We suck. So there's aggressiveness about it.
I think we should do two things here. I think we should summarize Campbell and talk about the decision that this guy made and why we wanted to do this episode. So I'll start it and we'll kind of wrap up Campbell and move into Ben Johnson specifically and talk about why we thought this was compelling. First of all, great companies and great managers do some of these things. First is you lay out job descriptions with KRAs, key result areas, right? What are those? Those are the things you should be doing. Every job should have 3 to 5. If it's more than 5, the person's confused. If it's under 3, it's not enough. It's not a position. So this goes from the lowest person on the totem pole to a CEO. This is the majority of what people do. It's really 3 to 5 big things. The owner of the company, start there. The owner of the team came in, saw mediocrity for years. Finally, someone in the Ford family is humble. And they said, I don't know football. I know cars. I know how to collect checks. I don't know this. So I'm going to find someone good because I'm tired of a mediocre product. And they laid out those steps. Great general manager. Great general manager finds a guy. Football coaches are all really good. If you make it to head football coach in the NFL, you are elite. And the difference between great and good is minuscule. There's no bad players in the NFL. There's bad teams, there's bad organizations. There's a finite difference between great and good. And it's why half of the teams that go to a playoffs every year don't make it the next year. And half of the teams in the playoffs this year weren't there last year. It's because it's just your 1 or 2 plays, a little bit of luck away. So what I think is fascinating is there was a culture change or sea change, top down, new management, new leadership, new directive. And let's go 3 levels down, Ian. Owner, general manager, coach reports to the general manager. All of those people knew what their job was, clear direction, and they were all given an ability to do the job and fail. Is that a fair way to kind of
pivot? I think that's
pivot?
an amazing way to say it. The owner didn't meddle with the general manager. GM got to pick the players that he brought in, that he drafted. GM didn't meddle with the head coach. Hey, it's your team. Coach it. Lead the men in the locker room. Head coach didn't meddle with his offensive coordinator. Your offense, kid. Go get it. Take some shots. Let's be aggressive. Here's the style I want to play. Here's what I want to do. Work within my confines. But if something goes wrong, you're not going to hear from me. I want you to take some chances. Let's go. And I'm not going to meddle.
Let's be honest. If something happens negatively, which it does, that doesn't mean you lost your job. It means we're having a conversation about it. If something happened bad inside of an organization, my business, any business, mistakes happen every freaking day. Elon Musk came out and talked about he wants to fail 10 to 15% of the time at Twitter. Because the way that he looks at it, they're not failing, they're not innovating enough. So failure is okay. But having a conversation like recklessness or dumb decisions is different than failure. And I think for the first time, this is being really exemplified by the coach and the offensive coordinator. The coach gave the guy some room. And my guess is they had a conversation about some of these risky plays. And he said, hey, in these situations, he probably gave them parameters. He didn't say, don't do this or don't do that. He probably said, here's kind of my comfort zone with this, go. And the guy is working inside of those parameters, but that's what successful management looks like.
Yeah, I love it. And the play you were talking about with the big tackle running open, Dan Campbell joked after that he was watching the wave in the stands. All he did was say, we're freaking going for it. It's 4th and 1. I'm not punting. That was his decision. And he was like, Ben, call a good one.
But the coach pulled
a good one. I'm not meddling. You call the play, get us a first down. And then afterward, he's like, what the hell would we're throwing to the tackle? Then he laughed and he's like, but that's Ben. He's good.
So let's do this. The Monday after the season ends is called what, Ian? Black Monday.
Bloody Monday.
Black Monday or Bloody Monday, right?
Yeah.
Black Monday is the day where most coaches who are going to get fired. I think there might be one more coach who's going to get fired. I don't know if they will or not, because San Diego's they got their head up their ass. But 5 coaches were fired either on that day, the day before, or during the season. So there's 5 new positions. And what happens is there's 2 types of people who get these head coaching jobs. Now, a crappy head coaching job in the NFL is like in the mid to high 4 million range, and really good ones are over 10. Like this is life-changing type of money. Like this is, and if you can sustain that for 8 years, I mean, you're looking at $100 million in earnings.
But even if you can't, most of these contracts are guaranteed where you're going to get 2 to 3 years of that money.
That's right. So, I mean, you're talking 10 $10 to $30 million. And the guy who we're talking about here, Ben Johnson, I think he's 37. So he's never gotten the bag. He's never gotten the money. He's never been paid. 5 years ago, he was doing a job that probably paid 275 grand. The difference between
2 years ago, a QC, offensive QC assistant, that's like maybe $100,000, $80,000 to $100,000 job. That job
I would
not
fact
paying
check.
shit.
We got to fact check that. I bet that's low. But the point is this:
We got to put that in the editor's notes.
Yeah, we'll have Nickel do it. So, or maybe Paxson.
No one's fact checking me.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up when you go to rant. The point is this: he doesn't have tons and tons and tons of money. But the guy, this is what we are talking about and why this is worth talking about as an episode. This man has emotional intelligence and he has situational awareness. Two things that are hugely important. Ian and I we're not valedictorians, but we are both hard workers. We're both situationally aware, and we both have high EQs when we're not drinking. Those are the moments when you make good decisions. And what this guy did is on Black Monday, the organizations that opened hire one of two people, up and comers or recirculated. A recirculated is a coach who is somewhere else who moves to another place. And the up and comers, like a Dan Campbell, nobody wanted that job. It's been a crappy job. Dan Campbell took a chance. But if it doesn't work, he may not be a head coach again. And this is kind of that fulcrum, which I think we want to kind of dial into and talk about what Ben Johnson did.
So Black Monday comes out and 5 guys get fired, and Ben Johnson is on everyone's list of everyone's talking about it. Hot coordinators that are going to interview for every job. The buzz starts to circulate. People get excited. The talk shows are talking about, look at what he did with a bad franchise in Detroit. And so immediately Lions fans like me are feeling dread. Like, God dang it. We finally get something going. Like, we're looking forward to next year. We got a good young coach and he's gone. Like, how is a team that's not going to the playoffs losing their best coach? So we're all feeling dread. He's going to go somewhere. So he interviews in Indy, he interviews in Houston, and he was supposed to go to Carolina this week, like today. And it was all but a foregone conclusion. Who's going to make him the offer and where is he going to go? Now, all of those places I just mentioned have big problems. The Colts have a problem with their owner right now. He has no credibility. Houston's been a disaster for years with their ownership group. Carolina's got a big problem with credibility with their owner. He's a newer guy. Denver has a huge problem. They got an ownership group. There's no real owner. So they're all kind of gross situations to go to. None of them are great situations, but it's not like Detroit has been a great situation for 50 years. It's one of the worst, but things are changing. So yesterday on social media, it comes out from the Detroit Lions that Ben Johnson's decided to take his name out of the hat from all head coaching positions, even though it was largely thought of he was the number one choice for the Colts and Carolina. And he said, I'm out. I have unfinished business in Detroit. I'm going to stay here with these guys and I'm going to keep learning and, get better, which, I didn't say anything to Frank at the time, but I was all over texting all of my friends from Detroit saying, this is unbelievable. Let's go. But why it's unbelievable, what Frank perfectly led up to is this guy has no money. He's made some money. He's not made a ton of money. Now he's going to make a hell of a lot of money. He'll be one of the highest paid offensive coordinators now.
If not the highest.
I guarantee you the owner in Detroit said, you can go look, but if you want to stay, I will pay you more than any offensive coordinator in the league. I'll guarantee you that that's happened behind the scenes. No one's talked about it. But a couple things I love. Dan Campbell didn't have to let him interview. He's a brand new coordinator, and you have to get permission from your team to go interview when you're under contract. But Dan is also a guy that's been looked over many times for head coaching jobs. He's had a chance with Miami. He had a chance with the Saints. They didn't take him. And Dan said, no way, he's earned it. He's awesome. He can go run a locker room today. He deserves the chance. So I think, one, that engenders loyalty from all of your coaches to be like, that's the kind of head guy we got here. But two, I think when Ben stepped back and looked, he thought, okay, I can get a lot of money and go to a really gross situation and be in over my head. And he probably knows he'd be in over his head. It's one thing to call the offense. It's another thing to run an NFL franchise, like run the whole thing as the head coach. And I think he looked at it and said, I'm going to forego some money and I'm going to play the long game. I'm learning a ton from an amazing coach. I got a good GM. We're building something. And I don't know if I was just lucky in my first year or is it real? And he made a decision that I think most Americans would not make. And that was passing on a lot of money to just keep playing the long game and to grow. And I think for me, it's fascinating because he'll make a fraction of what he could have made going to take a head coaching job. But I look at it also as it's a really smart move, because if he were to leave right now after just 1 year as a coordinator and bomb out in a crappy organization and get fired after 2 years, what does he have to lean back on? Remember that great year in 22 when the Lions almost made the playoff? Like, what success does he really have? He can't say he won the playoffs.
But that's also one of the reasons to take it, right? So like one of the reasons that he should jump ship and go is because, like, what if this was a fluke? What if I was a one-hit wonder and I go and I become a coach and I'm found out? Everybody deals, I don't care who you are, you deal with imposter syndrome. It's you get to that role that you've always dreamed of having. You get there and you realize you're the last person in the room. No one's coming in behind you. And you might not be good enough. So like the courage it takes and the self-belief it takes are huge. But there's a pivot here I want to get into. In your career, we've talked about it here on this podcast. In your career, Ian, has a manager ever told you, hey, Ian, slow down. You're going too fast. I know you want to get promoted, but you don't have the fundamental skills.
Yeah, of course.
Happened to me. I had that conversation with someone this week that works here. So like, this is a normal, I want to move up. I want more responsibility, i.e. I want more money, but you're not ready. So I don't know who's in his ear, if it's just him or if it's others, but this is a really smart move. And this is the move where it's like, listen, I wanted to quit and start my business in 2004. I did it in 2009. When the time finally happened, I was like, okay, enough. Because like, I've been thinking about it for 6 years and it was like, okay. But in that 6 years, I had 3 different positions, mostly lateral. I ran different departments. I had other experiences. My chances of succeeding with 6 extra years were so much higher. I had more money in the bank. I had more experiences. I had all these things that I didn't have 6 years earlier. I had the desire, but I didn't have the skill. So this is the type of thing where you look at it. Usually, if you are an incredible head coach, you get 2 shots. Almost nobody gets 3. So if this guy's 37 years old and he wants to work until he's 70, he's got 33 years left. And if he takes this shot and misses, he's got 1 more bullet left in the gun, and that's it. This is incredibly great advice for an NFL coach who's surrounded by people with huge egos, but for anybody. Like, sometimes you're better suited slow playing, even though it's hard to see what's in front of you.
I think there's a couple of other things I take away from this. You did it for a year. Good job. You went 9-8. Good job. Right. I think a guy like this with high standards, if I'm going to be a head coach, I kind of want more than a 17-game window to believe in myself, to be able to stand up in front of a group of men who are your age, that are trained killers, that are tough, and say, I know what the hell I'm talking about. Right. You take like an Andy Reid. He's been calling offenses for 30 years in the NFL. That's a guy who has credibility in a locker room. If you've done it 1 year, I would want to know for myself, to have the confidence. Can I keep growing? If I knew, I did pretty good, but there's some luck involved here. It could have easily gone the other way on a few of those calls. I'd want to know a little bit, but also I think there's something to be said. This guy knows he's kind of got a special group that was just hitting their stride at the end. And he probably knows this could be a really good offense next year. Like, 1 more year, they're all rookies.
Here comes the fanboy.
For sure. But if they weren't, why wouldn't he leave? Like, if it was a house of cards, he'd be out of there. He kind of knows our offense could be even better next year because they're young. And I think there's something to be said for when you're really in a groove and having fun at work, of letting it ride a little bit, even though maybe you're not doing the more. And I have a story I can tell for myself, but really when you get in that sweet spot where you and all your managers just are clicking and everything's working, there's something to be said for letting that ride and having another hell of a great year and having a lot of fun.
I have the perfect anecdote to this. Jim Harbaugh, also a football coach, is at the University of Michigan. And he is an uber successful coach. Everywhere he's gone, he's won. He's one of the only people that's played I think he's the only person been in the college football playoff and the Super Bowl as a head coach.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is uber successful.
Good coach.
Remarkably so. And he's at a very hard institution to be a great coach. That they deal with academics first, school second. But the point is this: he's built a juggernaut, and they were bad before he got there. And this is his alma mater. And he lives in a great place. It gets cold. It's in Michigan, but it's a great city from everything I've been told. Very cerebral, great place, good place to live.
Yeah, Ann Arbor's
it's always
awesome.
in the top 50 places to live in America list. And he lives close to his parents. He's got all these great things going on, but he's like 47-16 as a head coach, something like this, in the NFL. And there's an itch. So the NFL comes calling for him over and over again. And this year it got pretty serious. Last year it got pretty serious too. And his quote was this, Ian, which I think is exactly what you were driving at. Don't out happy. What that means is, I've got a great situation. It's pretty awesome. There's only so much happiness you're going to get. Why chase more of it if I'm pretty damn happy? So I would think with Ben Johnson, there's don't out happy is one. And the other side of it is this: he's in a place where he gets to really learn and has some grace. Let's say they bomb next year. They bomb. This is the guy who was the hottest property. They're going to have loyalty for him because he stayed. He's going to have a chance to learn. He's going to have a chance to be in an incubation. Dan Campbell takes the shots. This guy doesn't. Nobody knew this guy's name until a few week ago. So he's got an ability to lean into something that's pretty great, accomplish things he's never accomplished, and do it in a place where he's not at the forefront. And I would imagine, who knows what will happen, but I would imagine that these things will serve him later in life. And you ever hear him speak, he'll talk about, yeah, that year, that second or that third year I was in Detroit helped me with this.
And he can see a team go from the pits to some success and say, I watched the way the process worked. I got to see it out, and now I can go replicate it. Right now, he's seen it get to the fourth inning, right? He hasn't seen it through. He's too new. He doesn't have enough scars. He hasn't got through it. Frankie, I have a story on this. 2016, I was asked to move up in a Fortune 500 company, and I already had a really big job. I was probably, outside of the president, the highest paid guy already in the company. It was a bigger title and more money, more stock options. But it was going to be taking on a bunch of broken regions and kind of being over everything. It was more of a corporate job too. I would be out of the field. I wouldn't be out with the people that I had, hired and built. I'd have to manage a couple of corporate functions that it's just not my thing. It's lame. But I'd kind of resisted, and I took it. And I remember I went to dinner with my team, and I was in a really good space. Like, every manager I had was nails, had been with me for 10 years. I trusted them implicitly. I could go take a 3-week vacation. The company would run just fine. My business would run fine. And went out to dinner, and I remember it was kind of a celebration. Ian got promoted. Yay, this is great. And it was really nice. But I remember just being depressed the whole dinner. Like, why did I leave this? Like, I'm leaving all this behind. I put people in between me and these folks, and it ended up being a bad decision. I made a bunch more money going into that role for a couple of years, but I ended up leaving the company because I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like what I was being asked to do. I liked it better when I call it the coordinator, right? When I was in a coordinator role and part of something else, I liked that job. I liked my team. I was happy, and I was making more money than I could spend. So what the hell was more money than I could spend? And what I tried to do was out happy. That's what I tried to do. I'm happy making all this money and kicking ass. I'll be even happier with more money and more people. And it turned out to be the opposite, Frankie. I wasn't happier. I didn't out happy. I gave up happy for a job I wasn't terribly happy doing. And it 100% was not worth the extra money, even though it was a lot. It was not worth it.
So I think where we're at is this is a perfect place to end it.
The reason we're showing you this is top down. Leadership matters, ownership matters, getting in your lane and staying in your lane. Even the most successful people are doing only a few things because they do them very well, and that's it. Like the opposite of this is like I saw an interview with Jerry Jones. He can't even complete it. He's not even comprehensible anymore, and he's the owner and the general manager. Like run. So this person is kind of like leaning in because the organization is treating him well. And the other thing, like I told this story before, I'll just tell it now. We're on football, I'll talk about it. Fred Taylor is a former Florida Gator, and he came out of the same high school as a guy named Riedel Anthony. And they were both, I don't think they were stars back then, but they were like big time blue chip recruits. And he had 3 incredible years, and he could have gone to the NFL. And when he looked around, he realized I'm going to be a 3rd or a 4th round draft pick. So Riedel Anthony went in the 1st round, like 17th overall. Fred Taylor came back for his 4th year. And Fred Taylor was then drafted, I think, the top 10 overall by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he ended up playing there and with the Patriots, and he was in the NFL for almost 15 years,
Awesome
which is
player.
An eternity
Awesome
for a football player.
Yeah.
But this is why nobody they look.
And what
at
did
your,
Riddell Anthony do in the NFL? Nothing.
Riedel Anthony was fine, but there's a better example of this. So
he was on no one's fantasy football team.
No, but hold on. So Fred Taylor was looked at. His DNA was I am a 1st round draft pick, blue chipper. Now, if he had been a 4th rounder, people would probably gotten tired of him. But he had elevated his stock because he waited and he didn't rush. That's what Ben Johnson is doing here. Now, the best carbon copy of this you can look at is Fred Taylor's son. Fred Taylor's son was the preeminent star in Florida football. He was in high school, 8th grader, he was playing varsity. He went to Florida and he was good. He left as a junior. He did not follow his dad's advice, and he was just as good, if not better than his dad in high school and college. He came out as a 6th rounder. His career was over in 3 years. Over. He didn't have the skills, he didn't have the talent, and he didn't have the pedigree because he didn't wait. Had he waited 1 more year, who knows? He could have still been out in 3 years, but he may not have been. He could have been like his dad. And that's the Ben Johnson story for me.
He also didn't know how to grind. He didn't know how to grind. He didn't learn that. He didn't learn how to grind. Everything was given to him. When he got to the NFL and he realized everyone's more talented than me, I'm going to have to put the time in. He wasn't ready to do it. He wasn't equipped. It wasn't easy anymore. What I'll wrap this one up with, and I tell this to people all the time, there's only one person in your entire life who will care about your career from start to finish, and that's you. There's no one else, not your managers today. You will have to worry about it for 50 years, and you have to make decisions for the long game. You can't, if you're always making short game decisions, if you're taking money before you're ready for it, you will get exposed. They will pay you a lot of money, but with that money comes level of expectations. And if you know you're not ready for it, you shouldn't take it. You should keep growing, build yourself. There's nothing more important than if you build yourself up with experiences, you're going to get whatever money you want in your career, in your life. If you are good, if you take money without having the skill set and the experiences, you will get exposed. And so I would say always lean on the job that builds your experience up, that builds your skills up. And if you don't have those skills, keep trying to get them before you rush out and get the money, because the money always comes if you have the skill, if you have the experience, you will have more opportunities you know what to do with. Don't rush. You got to make long game decisions, because you're the only one that'll give a shit about your career for the whole career.
I'm desperate for this episode to end, but I can't let it yet. What Ian just said, I think, is critical. If you are getting into a position like as a head coach or a manager or a leader, you do not make the big money until you help others produce for your company. And employees are inherently smart. Football players, no. Dan Campbell played in the NFL for 8 years. I do not believe Ben Johnson did. There's a credibility factor that you have to have, because you can't lead people if you don't.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yep. So you have like it's not just exposure. You don't make the big money unless you lead. And if you don't have the tools to lead, you can't put yourself in a position to lead. Here's a really quick, great example of this. It's the guy who was with the Patriots forever, who is basically this guy, same age. He was like high 30s. His name is, he's now the coach of the Raiders. Josh McDaniels. He left, flopped out in 3 years. He didn't have the goods. He tried to be Bill Belichick and he wasn't, and he couldn't lead because he didn't have the chops. Or what Ben Johnson is doing is he's really leaning into the fact of, I need to be a better leader of people. And if I get to that point, we'll thrive, but I'm not there yet, so I can't lead.
So in wrapping this whole thing up, the Let Me Speak to a Manager podcast called the 2022 downturn. We called all the layoffs that are now happening here in the first quarter of 2023. We called the demise of the meme stocks. Frank called the crypto downturn by saying all of the Super Bowl commercials would lead to a bunch of bankrupt companies. Fact, and you are now hearing it here first, the Detroit Lions Super Bowl 2023 team. Let's get it. Let's go. Frank is nodding his head if you can't see on TV. Lions, you heard it here first. Detroit Lions.
They're like plus 120.
Hey, not the same old Lions. It's a different. I'm going to be just absolutely unbearable to talk to, Frank, next year. We're going to be friggin' awesome.
And for those of you that don't talk to Ian on a regular basis, he's typically pretty unbearable.
More unbearable than normal for sure. And if you loved this episode, and I know you did, you give us a nice 5-star review on Apple and subscribe and tell your friends about us. Frankie, great to see you, Holmes.
You haven't lost your fastball, pal.